This is Ollie Mann
on BBC Three Counties Radio.
Well, good morning to you. Ollie Mann here on Three Counties Radio, standing in for Jonathan Vernon-Smith on the JVS show. It's just gone 10 a.m. and this morning, well, let me tell you how this happened. We were talking about Tommy Robinson's decision, and Kevin Carroll, of course, to leave the English Defence League. Their statement last night made with the group Quilliam, the counter-extremism think tank, self-described to stand down. Tommy Robinson said he rejects the fascist views. Excuse me, I'm completely misreading that. Tommy Robinson said that the group was becoming increasingly right-wing, essentially, increasingly extremist, and that he felt he couldn't deal with all of the elements in it. As I was talking about Tommy Robinson, asking your questions about him, he came knocking on our door, and now he's sitting here in the studio with us. He's joined in the studio now by Kadir Batch from the Luton Islamic Centre, who we had as an arranged guest on this subject as well. So we've ended up having a bit of a Barney about all of this. And just before the news, Kadir, you said that in an ideal society there would be punishments for example homosexuals, and Tommy Robinson had put the point to you that this is why he was concerned by your ideology, which is why he was anti-Islamic and anti-Islamisation, and put Luton Islamic Centre in that camp. Do you understand why Tommy Robinson might be concerned by Islamic ideology when, even though you say we don't want it in Britain, you do use phrases like in an ideal society and then come up with a statement like that?
Yeah, that's fair enough. He has every right to disagree and to criticise. For me, when I say ideal society, I mean an Islamic society, not a Western secular society where we live here at all.
But you are here.
One second, every Muslim, moderate Muslim, holds this belief as well.
But ideally, would you want this to be an Islamic society?
We'll come to that just as much as any person would want their...
So ideally,
just like any person would want their
I'm trying to get the vision
society
the best
to be implemented.
Britain you could see, how would it look?
I'll come to that. I want to answer his question first, then I'll come to your question. Your question was ideal society, Now, when I say ideal society, I mean an Islamic state. We are not in an Islamic state. We're far from Islamic state. But however, this is the teachings of Islam, and every moderate Muslim holds that these are the punishments in an Islamic state.
That's concerning.
No problem.
In an Islamic state,
yes. Concerned, and you can criticise it, you can disagree with it, until the cows come home.
I actually want to represent moderate Muslims who are listening, who might say, actually, well, I'm a moderate Muslim, and I don't want homosexuals to be punished for being homosexual.
Yeah, in an Islamic state?
Well, in an ideal state, which is the word used.
What's an ideal state?
Well, that's what I'm asking you. What I'm saying to you is you are playing into right-wing hands, aren't you?
No. I've already answered that. An ideal Islamic society is an Islamic state, as far as I'm concerned. Living in an Islamic society, Islamic state. That's the ideal. But we are not in that.
But there are moderate Muslims here who consider this to be an ideal state, that they can practice their religion in peace and not be under Sharia.
And that's exactly how I feel. I feel that this is a society which we can practice our religion, no problem, but it's not an ideal state for me. Do you call it an ideal state where you've got so much crime? If we call it an ideal state...
What's your ideal state?
I've said it twice already. You want me to say it a third time? You know very well what I hold as an ideal society. However, does that mean that we are imposing the Sharia law on the society of Great Britain? Absolutely absurd.
Do you know what
how can anybody think of this?
Well, what would a moderate gay Muslim listening to what you're saying think? Well, they might come to that conclusion.
I've been on this show, on one of the shows here, and I've spoken to a so-called moderate gay Muslim. And, we differed, and that was the end of the matter.
Can I just say...
That's the product of being in this society, the freedom of speech, of freedom to be able to...
And you're entitled to freedom of speech, which is why you're allowed... Absolutely,
exactly.
That's why you're allowed to do it.
So do I not have a right now to hold...
You do have a right. All I'm simply pointing to you is this is... Tommy Robinson was arguing, essentially, this is what the English Defence League was fighting, and what I'm saying is, to listeners who don't like the English Defence League, you're saying, well, I can sort of see where he's coming from.
Yeah, this is why I'm saying that he was scaremongering, because the reason why is because all these years, have you ever heard from the Islamic Centre saying we want this implemented in Great Britain?
Okay, good. No, I haven't. So let's put that point to Tommy Robinson.
Can I just put a point, yeah?
Well, answer that, though.
Okay, answer that first. Our local council, we're in Luton. Luton Borough Council have refused dialogue with me for 4.5 years, yet... this man sitting next to me, whose ideal vision for this country would be homosexuals getting executed, it has a table at the seat with the council.
He did just stress that wasn't his ideal view for this country.
His ideal
he did use the word ideal, which I picked him up on.
Not for this country.
So for this country. What is your ideal future for Britain? What's your ideal future for Britain?
I don't have an ideal future for Britain.
What would you want to see Britain?
What I would like to see is peace, tranquility, happiness. All the religions get on together.
So you would not ever want Sharia in this country?
In the future, if Sharia came to this country, if it came, it would only come by the people choosing.
No,
I'm coming to your question.
Personally.
You're asking me, and I'm giving you the answer. If you want to listen, that if Sharia ever comes to this country, it will come by the people's desire for it, not by force, not by war, not by killing, not by harming at all. That's the only way that I envisage Sharia. Can I finish what I'm saying? This is the only time that I envisage Sharia in this law and in this country. So you tell me now, what decent person is going to reject that? If this is what the people want,
but
then let them have it.
It is relevant.
But if the people do not want it, then it's not going to happen.
Can I ask you, would you want Sharia in this country?
I've answered it already, my friend.
No, can't.
Listen to do
you just don't give you.
Do you want me to repeat again? No, I've given you my answer.
Yes or no?
And you just.
Yeah, well, I took it as a yes, but I'm hoping the presenter took it as a yes. Are we agreed?
Well, the word ideal was used, wasn't it?
I hope Luton Borough Council are listening to this interview.
Well, I think 1 second. Let's talk about Luton Borough Council. What makes you think that I'm sitting with Luton Borough Council every day anyway?
When MEPs come to Luton to counter the English Defence League, you had a seat at the table with them.
No, whoa. Which MEPs?
When 5 MEPs come into Luton, I'm not right.
No, I wasn't at no table with no MEPs. I was in the coffee pot. That's it. That's what in the coffee pot when one of them MEPs came.
Do you have political dialogue? Do you have debate? Do you have dialogue with Luton Borough Council?
As much as you have dialogue.
I don't have any dialogue. They refuse dialogue.
We've only got a few minutes left. We've only got a few minutes left on this because we have to go on with the rest of the show. So I want to put one question finally to both of you. To Mr. Robinson, your mic's down so that I can put one question to both of you finally. Mr. Batch, the issue that Mr. Robinson has identified with what you've been saying is that if there was a local politician who privately held views, in your case it might be homophobia, people would say from what you've said, what if it was anti-Semitism, and put on a website in their own name that they believe that thing, then even if they never openly called for that to be in place, isn't it reasonable that some people are going to have some fear of that person and the effect they could have on their local area?
They have every right to. Why? Because not everybody wants to Sharia. Not everybody wants Islam. Not everybody wants this to see this as an ideal, solution. So they have every right to.
But every right to say it. But do they have every right to fear it? Isn't it natural that you're going to stir up fear with that? You fear something which is really, not to be feared. Because look, you can look at how the Sharia is established in Saudi Arabia, for example. Do the people fear the Sharia? They don't fear it. But actually, you haven't said that. Sometimes from the things that people fear is what keeps society in order. Like, you fear going to prison, so you do not commit a crime. It's similarly like that. It's a deterrent. The Sharia rules are deterrents. They're not implemented. How many hands get chopped off? How many women get lashed? And it just doesn't happen. Very, very, very few. So 40. I mean, it just does. Okay. In an ideal Islamic society, these laws do not get implemented. They're just deterrents. Okay. Final question for Mr. Robinson. Then we have some calls, and I want you to talk to our listeners.
What Kadir's saying is that gays should be too scared to be gay.
Final question for you, Mr. Robinson, before we go to our listeners, and our listeners can ask you about that as well. But this is, after all, more about you. It's your news day, not Miss Kadir's. What I want to ask you is, how are Muslims listening supposed to engage with you, bearing in mind the past that you've had, whether you intended that or not? Isn't it natural that, just as you're saying, your followers would fear what Mr. Batch has on his website? Isn't it natural that moderate Muslims would fear you? And why would they engage with you rather than with another organisation?
Because I believe many moderate Muslims listening to this will support what I've been saying rather than what Kadir's been sitting there saying.
OK, let's take your calls. They're coming in right now and you can join in. 08459 455 555. You can text 81333.